Getaway day as we sit here recording the latest Buffalo End Zone podcast. One more Bills practice at minicamp, and then everyone goes on vacation until training camp starts at the end of July. I'm Kevin Carroll. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone podcast, everyone.
And I'm Andy Young. Looking forward to that respite between the end of June and the end of July. I think you and I both have some time off in store, maybe a couple of rounds of golf.
I think everyone's looking forward to it. The players are, we are, the coaches are, but you know they're going to keep working even when they're not at the team facility. You and I, maybe not so much. We might be out on the golf course, Andy, but here we go. Mandatory minicamp starts up for the Bills, and the top story in the sight to see, and what everyone's talking about is number 58, Matt Milano, out there. And we were told that it was coming, that he'd be limited, but he would be out there. But seeing number 58 out there with his teammates was a pretty nice sight to see as they started minicamp and moved their way through.
Yeah, that is significant, if not surprising news to see Matt Milano in limited work at organized team, at mandatory minicamp. Sean McDermott had indicated a few weeks ago that we probably wouldn't see him really get going until training camp, but now to see him do some limited work, some individual drills on the field as he returns from that season-ending devastating leg injury that he suffered in London last season, it's really a good sign for the Bills. Will he be full go for training camp? That's the goal. They want to work through this, ramp him up, see how he handles the work here at minicamp, and they hope that he's ready to go for training camp with the obvious goal of having him locked and loaded, ready to play week one. And that's huge because he probably is their best defensive player.
He was sorely missed, Andy, and head coach Sean McDermott using the term day-to-day when he first spoke at the beginning of the week about how they're approaching Milano, and that will continue even while the team isn't doing any team activities, but they're going to keep working on it. He said day one of minicamp, we'll see how he feels the next day. Out there again, we're recording this with one more practice to go, but it just seems like he's on schedule or maybe even ahead of schedule because, like you said, we were maybe targeting training camp. Now it looks like there's going to be a possibility of him being full go when training camp finally comes around. But, again, a lot of work for him to do to get to that point between the middle of June and late July.
Think about the trials and tribulations of the defense last season and all the injuries they faced. What if Matt Milano had stayed healthy throughout that season and had been teamed up with Terrell Bernard, who broke out last season at middle linebacker? I mean, both of those guys were having outstanding starts to the seasons for the Bills. I mean, it was really incredible. They were maybe one of the better linebacker tandems in the NFL, which was a big question as Bernard tried to replace Tremaine Edmonds in the lineup, who had left via free agency. And now you look at that and you get those two guys back and healthy, and you wonder, man, what could they have done with a healthy Terrell Bernard and a healthy Matt Milano when you're trying to guard Travis Kelce against the Chiefs in the playoffs, right?
Right, and you take me back to the Steelers game and then the Chiefs game when they were just decimated at that spot and on defense as a whole, and you look at going into this season because you just push that behind you. I mean, you can sit there and dwell on it, but a new fresh season's coming up. You want a healthy Matt Milano. You know during training camp they're not pushing Matt Milano to be ready for week one because, again, it's going to be more important to have him later in the season than like they did with Trey White, like they did with Von Miller. Even if the player's chomping at the bit, I'm good to go. They're not going to force it because of what he means. But you mentioned Bernard. He even said this week, I believe after the first date, that it was so great to see him out there in drills with them.
Yeah, and people forget, some people forget. Matt Milano was first-team All-Pro linebacker.
Right.
He is the most unassuming superstar I've ever come across in my time covering professional sports because he's an incredible player, but he's not out there with the media. He doesn't do a lot of talking. He's not flashy in terms of anything he does off the field or on social media or anything like that. He just goes about his business and kicks tail, man. I mean, he's just really an incredible player. So to have that duo back together, I think that's going to be a huge development for the Bills if Milano can stay on track throughout the next few weeks to get to training camp and keep him healthy leading into week 1.
I think you could be standing next to Milano at the grocery store, and maybe you might be like, is that an NFL player? But not be like, my God, that's Matt Milano. And you talk about how he is with talking to the media. Sean McDermott talked about where he is. You don't even really need to hear from Matt Milano. I mean, we hear from him from time to time. He's very short with answers and doesn't really give you much. And I don't think
it's not his thing, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that's fine. The proof is in the pudding, and the proof is on the field. And here we are. He was out there, and so far, at least so good as far as what Matt Milano looks like and where he stands as the Bills go to break and then start working on training camp.
And I think for Bobby Babich to have him back in the fold is huge for a first-year defensive coordinator and potentially a first-year play caller to have your best player on defense back and in the fold and healthy. That's a big, big thing for Babich and company, and obviously Bobby knows him well, having coached the linebackers the last couple of seasons.
One of the other big stories, of course, the entire year, it's not going away.
We broke the trend this week. We didn't start with wide receivers.
Force a habit. I'm thinking Josh Allen. Then it's like, well, no, Matt Milano is the big story, but Josh Allen and his new group of wide receivers. The big thing going into this, Andy, you've been out there. I've watched some of the video that you've sent back. And what's your overall thought being there and seeing it in person? Because I'm obviously watching video, and no one's showing anything bad on videos at this stage in the game. It's all just, here's the good play, here's the amazing play, here's this, here's that.
Right. There has been some level of inconsistency on the Bills' offense this season in minicamp and through OTAs. And I think you've seen the defense win more days than not. And that could probably be expected given that Josh Allen has almost a completely brand new group of wide receivers that he's learning to build a rapport with. I mean, you look at Khalil Shakir, who we'll talk about that a little bit, but he left minicamp practice on Tuesday with an apparent leg injury, did not practice on Wednesday. So, he was out there, had a wrap around his knee or his leg. So, but he was still there watching practice on Wednesday. So that's an important development to kind of keep an eye on as we get to training camp if that's something more serious. We won't hear from Sean McDermott about that until then, so we'll see. We won't probably have any answers unless he practices here on Thursday as we record. But overall, it's been some inconsistency among the offensive group. Some missed throws from Josh, some dropped passes from some of the wide receivers, some dropped passes from James Cook as well, which has been a theme.
Right. I was going to – you're hoping not to see that anymore because, I mean, you can name 2 passes off the top of your head at least that James Cook dropped that could have changed the outcome of a game. Not that it's going to change anything in the long run, but the Eagles drop just really sticks out to me.
Yeah, he's got to get that together. And it's funny because some of the other colleagues in the media and I were talking about this on the sidelines at minicamp. Like, coming out of college, James Cook was known almost purely as a pass-catching running back. And then, he's had some issues with that. Hopefully, for the Bills' sake, he can get that figured out if he's got a case of the yips or if it's a concentration thing. I know Dawson Knox dealt with that a lot, especially early in his career, and really worked on his concentration and his focus, and maybe Cook needs to do a little bit of that. But back to the wide receivers, we see quite a bit of looking towards Curtis Samuel. We see quite a bit of looking towards actually Chase Claypool has made some strides and been very consistent among the group of wide receivers in terms of making big plays. Saw a really nice splash play to KJ Hamler, the speedster, who's coming off a host of injuries throughout his career, the former second-round pick of the Denver Broncos. Deep ball from Allen to Hamler down the sidelines in stride. And
love to see it.
Yeah, Highmark Stadium would love to see that. And I've actually got a feature with KJ Hamler coming up soon on Spectrum News 1, kind of discussing where he is in his career, battling through injuries throughout his career, a lot of issues with mental health and things like that. And he seems to be in a good place now as he tries to make the Bills roster. That's one of the guys, KJ Hamler, that we talked about going into this offseason program. What's up with him? Is there anything there, right?
Right.
Because he's immensely talented. He's fast. He's kind of one of those types of players that the Bills don't really have or haven't had, but he's never really been able to fully put it together in the NFL just because he's been devastated by injuries. He had a heart condition in Denver last season. So, and then people want to know about Keon Coleman as well, and he's shown some flashes too. He's shown some rookie mistakes, a couple drops here and there, but he's also made some nice plays as well, going up to catch balls in traffic, making plays, Josh Allen looking his way. That's obviously a work in progress too, but he's got the makings of a player that's going to be in a very important cog in this offense.
So that was one of the top stories we were focusing on, what you're looking at when you go into OTAs and minicamp, and it was Keon Coleman was one of the big. What do the Bills have there? That was their first pick of the draft. A lot of questions about breakaways. The guy's a beast to look at, Andy, and
he's now signed his contract.
Yeah, he signed his contract, so all the rookies are signed, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, from 1 to 10, when you went into this, where would you put Keon Coleman as far as how he's looking right now from what you've seen out at practices?
I'd probably give him a solid 6 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that he's been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say he's been terrible either. Kind of right in the middle, probably average to good.
Okay.
During practice, I think Allen's starting to build a little bit of a rapport with him, which is important. And I think he can do maybe a little bit more than people think or thought. I think he's showing some separation. I think he's showing the ability to use a little bit more speed than maybe people thought. But we'll see. I mean, he's got a lot to work on.
Big personality when he was introduced. You're out there. Does that personality show out there, or is he more down to business?
Well, the thing is like we can't really hear what's going on the field specifically. Like once in a while you'll hear a player that particularly a player that you could always hear on the sidelines in my past was Shaq Lawson. He just had this bellowing, booming voice and always clowning and joking around so you could hear him. But I haven't seen Keon like completely clowning or like being loud and boastful. But Josh Allen said when he first met him, like, hey, this dude likes to talk. I don't know if you know that. So maybe he's talking some smack or just having a good time a little more quietly than we can hear from the sidelines.
All right. Speaking of Josh Allen and the drops that you had mentioned earlier, Allen's press conference this week, when asked about it, if he's frustrated or anything with the drops and things not being quite where they want it to be, and Allen's response, it's football. We're having fun out there. You know, it's football. Like
the smirk he had on his face too when that question was asked.
Right.
Fantastic.
It was great.
He's not frustrated at all. At least he says he's not.
And would you think at this time of year, why would, like, if you're in the middle of August and this crap's still going on, maybe, but
even then, like, we get so wrapped up in like the day-to-day of OTAs and minicamp and training camp, even the preseason, and then things like look completely different during the regular season. Like obviously, if they're just completely discombobulated every day during training camp, that's a story. But it's also only a story because we get to see it all, right? Like once they get to practice during the regular season, we only see stretching and individual drills, and then nobody sees any of that stuff that happens during practice. So it's not a story. I think they've got a lot of kinks to work out. Josh said that's important. We got to get this done quickly. He mentioned that he's going to try to get the guys together during the 5-week break or so that they have between minicamp and training camp here through the end of June and early July. That's huge, right? Especially when you've got such a new group of guys. The only guy that really has caught a pass from Josh Allen in a game is Khalil Shakir.
I'm assuming that's why, unlike previous years, they didn't cut minicamp short. I think there's still stuff to work on. Usually they have it set up for 3 days and it goes 2, and then they do like an organized team thing, either go bowling or whatever NFL
Right,
teams
or just
do.
cut it short and let them have
and
have
let
an
them
extra
go.
day. Right.
This year, that's not the case. And with all those new faces and with where they're at as far as getting to the playoffs but not really doing much, now's the time to keep pushing it.
Think about this, too. You basically have 2 new coordinators.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Joe Brady took over as an interim, towards the latter third of the season last year. This is his first offseason. He's installing some new concepts, and Alan mentioned that as well. Hey, we're putting in some new things. This is going to happen than we've done the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Bobby Babich has been here, but he's a new face at defensive coordinator. They just need to work through some things. And, yeah, normally McDermott would cut this thing a little short, but maybe he's not seen enough, right? Or they need that extra day of work. They need to install a few things. They need to push this thing ahead and set a good tone as they head off to break and get ready for training camp.
Hey, one of the other things, and you did a story on this, and I had talked about it when I was on air, is Josh Allen altered his throwing motion last year after his injury early in the season, and putting in a lot of work this offseason through OTAs, through minicamp. I'm sure he'll keep doing it up until and through camp on looking at how his throwing motion is, and not saying he's totally dissatisfied with himself, but knows that there's nothing perfect out there, and tweaks need to be made.
It's interesting. During OTAs, we saw the setup. He's been doing biometric mapping data of his throw.
Sounds complicated.
So they have cameras set up in a circle, a bunch of cameras, to get a 360 view of exactly how he's throwing the football. And Josh mentioned that, when he got banged up last season, whether it was his shoulder, his elbow, he's been dealing with a couple of those things for the past couple of seasons.
Right.
That it did alter the way he threw a little bit. And he noticed that he got long in his throwing motion. He got long in his stride. And he said naturally the body, when you got some aches and pains, kind of adjusts to move where you're not going to feel the pain.
Right.
It's like the old trick when the guy goes to the doctor and says, hey, doc, it hurts when I do this. And the doc says, all right, well, just don't do that, right?
Wow, that's an old school, dad joke.
Well,
right there.
I am a father of 2.
That's true.
I am over 40 now. I'm a man. I'm 40.
I'm 50. I'm an old man. But go on.
Well, didn't we talk about you being in your 70s last week?
Yeah, I think we did.
Ad nauseum. So, yeah, Josh said, look, I'm not trying to reinvent my throwing motion or my mechanics. It's just I need to refine things, and I need to get back to some of the ways I'm supposed to be doing it, right? And that's fine, right? Like, I think a lot of quarterbacks probably do that. They're not perfect, and they're not set in stone as I'm going to do things. As you get older, as you have injuries, as things change, or that, old bad habits creep in for whatever reason.
Right.
You got to work on that. We all know, when Josh came out, he wasn't like this refined product, right? He wasn't polished, so he had to really work on those things. We talked a lot about his work with Jordan Palmer and those sorts of things to really find himself. And, getting back to basics sometimes isn't a bad thing, right? He's had elite, stellar seasons. That doesn't mean that you can't improve or at least do things the way you want to be doing them if they slip.
Bills Mafia thinks Josh Allen's perfect. Josh Allen knows he's not perfect, and there's stuff to work on. One of the other things, Andy, the center exchange.
Bills Mafia thinks he's perfect. I love it, Kevin.
Center exchange, new center for Josh Allen as we kind of start wrapping up on the offensive side of the ball here. But, again, the line isn't banging up against each other. It is what it is at this time of year.
Right.
But that's still on people's mind is Mitch Morse is now gone. Connor McGovern in. How's that looking?
McGovern says so far so good. He spoke with the media a little bit after practice on Wednesday, and he said a lot of it is just kind of learning, inside baseball, so to speak here. But where Josh wants to put his hands under center and where he likes the football to go. I'm avoiding some euphemisms here. So they're just kind of working on that, right? And McGovern says he's missed playing center terribly. He grew up playing center, transitioned to guard when he made it to the NFL for this first several years. He's happy to be back at that position. He feels comfortable there. It's kind of, he says it's a natural fit for him because he always played it growing up. So I would expect there to be like little kinks, like when Josh and Morris worked together for as long as they did. You just get used to that, right? And there's some like mechanical things that happen there that between quarterback and center. Like when he's in shotgun, does he like the ball dead center? Does he like it come to one shoulder, to another? They work on those things, right? We don't really see that. You don't see it during a game like, oh, he likes the ball on this hip or whatever. So just working out those kinds of things. I think they'll be fine. McGovern seems like a smart guy that can, do the things, make the calls. It's important to step up as a leader in that position too, because you're the main man on the offensive line. Obviously, Deion Dawkins is there, and they've got some other good players, some veterans in those spots. But you're making a lot of reads, you're making calls, that sort of thing. So that's important for him and Josh to get up to speed to build that rapport.
One last note on the offense, because we heard from Dawson Knox a lot with Dalton Kincaid. We talked about going into it and if Dawson Knox is happy with his role and what's it going to be moving forward. And we finally got to hear from the tight end himself this week on where he sees things right now.
Yeah, he seems like he's in a good place. I know we've talked on this podcast like the end of last season. Dawson indicated that he was a little bit frustrated or disappointed in his season last year and how things went. Obviously, he dealt with some injuries and was banged up for a good bit, had an issue with his wrist, I believe. And then they tried to implement the two tight end attack with Dalton Kincaid to some success, some not, right? And you saw Dawson Knox's role in the offense really relegated to more of a blocking role. And he had been their number one tight end for several years, basically since he joined the team. And for him to kind of take a step back in terms of pass catching was, I think, somewhat disappointing. But he said right now he's in a good place with Joe Brady and what they're trying to implement. He's excited to put more of the two tight end, 12 personnel formation on the field.
Like we thought was going to be all the rage last year.
Yeah, and Dorsey really started that way, and then Brady kind of went away from it.
Yeah.
And part of that was Dawson was hurt some of the time too. But I think Knox said that it's really a place where they can set the tone for opposing defenses. They can create mismatches. They can create confusion as to whether it's going to be run or pass. And if Dawson can, like we've discussed this, he's probably maybe making a little more money than what what they're using him for. Yeah. I won't say that he's capable of what they're currently using him for, but if they can get him back to being a red zone target, open on third downs, and also use him in that blocking role too and kind of interchange those guys, that's huge. I don't know how much more there's in store for him, just because we both think, and I think a lot of folks think, Dalton Kincaid's in for a monster season because he is just a polished, smooth route runner at the tight end position, playing a different sort of tight end. He's not usually an inline, fingers, hands on the ground, blocking type of tight end. He's more of a slot receiver in a way. What's left on the plate for Dawson Knox? I don't know, but if they can get a little bit more out of him, that would be big.
Absolutely. Let's go to the defense and two names that we talked about keeping an eye on. Kaiir Elam needing to show something. His big knock, Andy, came up with some big plays during games, but was there something wrong going on at practice where the coaches didn't have trust in him to give him as much playing time? Because we've seen him make bad plays followed by a really good play. I'm thinking of the Pittsburgh playoff game.
Yes.
So he needs to impress. I think we can all agree this year.
And he has. He's really done a nice job throughout the spring. during minicamp so far, Christian Benford has been excused to deal with a family matter. So
Mhm.
Elam has been in the lineup a little bit more, and he's made the most of it. He's had a couple of interceptions. He's made nice plays. He's been good in coverage. If they can unlock him, my goodness, are they in a good spot at the cornerback position with Rasul Douglas, with Christian Benford, with Elam? I think Rasul Douglas is going into the final year of his deal.
Yeah.
But, if they were to move on from him, and if Elam's in a good place, you got to remember he's only in his third year as a first-round pick. They could potentially have him for 3 more seasons,
Right.
if they use the fifth-year option, right? So, he seems to be in a good place right now, and he's making the most of it. Now, again, we don't know. We never have really heard a good reason as to why he was always inactive, right?
Right.
Like, was it something going on in practice? He said, I don't think it's that.
I think
But
he had an injured ankle.
yeah, and
at
he
the
was injured
beginning of
last season, but, still, right?
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
What's been the issue there? So,
Mhm.
obviously he hasn't been perfect when he's been in games, but like you said, he has made some big plays at times too. He's had a couple of big interceptions in games to kind of bounce back from rougher stretches,
Yeah.
right? So, if he can find some semblance of what they expected out of a first-round pick that they traded up to get,
Mhm.
that's huge. I don't know if that's going to happen. I still think he's, at least third in the pecking order. We'll see.
He's had some big plays. DeMar Hamlin. I mean, by now we know the story of what happened a few years ago. Mostly a game day scratch during last. Feel good story to come back. I think a lot of us agreed that he really needs to do something at this point. I think in order for the Bills not to move on from him, I think they still might, but you said he was one of the standouts on defense during practice so far.
Yeah, man, DeMar Hamlin has really done a nice job, and Sean McDermott was asked about that on Tuesday to kick off mandatory minicamp, and he said DeMar is playing consistent, he's playing fast, he's playing focused, and I think all that stuff, it'll never be fully behind him, the cardiac arrest and
Right.
everything that went with that. The guy was dead on the field,
Yeah.
and they brought him back to life. You never fully get over that, but I think a season removed from that now, he seems to be in a good place too.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically, on the field, he's really doing a nice job. And, a lot of people, including myself, thought he was pretty far down the depth chart at safety, but the way he's played throughout the spring, he's had some interceptions, some breakups, being in the right place. I think he's making himself a push to slide up there, and we'll see about the roster come training camp, end of training camp, and end of the preseason. But he's making another push to be on this roster and give them a reason to play him at times. Special teams will be big for him if he can be a contributor there. But obviously he's battling with Cam Lewis. They've got Cole Bishop now, so
Right.
where is that? They've got a bunch of players: Taylor Rapp, Mike Edwards, who they signed.
Well, let's talk Taylor Rapp
Yeah.
because when you're talking about safety in the Bills, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, not on the team anymore. Taylor Rapp on the team last year. They need leaders in that back end of the defense because that was Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. So Taylor Rapp, a lot on his shoulders now going into this season.
Yeah, I mean, he's the veteran with more starting experience of this crew. And Sean McDermott said last week he really saw him be able to take the reins in the safeties room as the leader of that group. And McDermott said that was really nice to see, and that he's watched the growth of Rapp behind the scenes and on the field really grow. And they need that because you talk about Poyer and Hyde, those were all pro safeties. Those were vet guys. Those were really heart and soul of the defense kind of guys. Leaders in every step of the way, right? Off the field, on the field, in the locker room, all that stuff. So there's a void there.
Yeah.
And to see Rapp step into that role, I think McDermott has probably pushed for that,
Uh-huh.
and they need it. Rapp has made some big hits in practice too, and that's gotten him in a little bit of hot water. But
That's never good
Right.
this time of year or on your own
Right.
teammate any time of year.
that's kind of what he's known for, though, is being a big hitter and kind
Yeah.
of that kind of player. But to see him in that role and step up and take over leadership and the learning in the safeties room, that's clutch.
Check out how I'm going to link this right here. You ready for this, Andy?
Let's see it.
Okay, Rasul Douglas saying during his press conference when he got here, he just did what Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer told him to do.
Yeah.
Now it's Taylor Rapp there. Rasul Douglas, not at OTAs, but showed up for minicamp. And it seems like that's just his MO, man. That's how he's going to operate. That's how he has operated and will continue to operate.
Yeah, he said that, like, he treats the voluntary time, like OTAs and the workout program, as voluntary, and that they sacrifice so much as players during the season, basically from July through January, February.
Mm-hmm.
They miss funerals, they miss birthdays, miss events with their kids, that it's time for him to mentally unwind and spend some time with his loved ones and
I kind of like that
count his
train of thought.
I think you would. Count his blessings, right? That's fine. He showed up when he was supposed to at mandatory minicamp, and he's here, and he said that it's good for him to have kind of this full off season now, and he's still really learning the defense.
Yeah.
He only knew basically like game plan specific parts of the defense last season, and like you said, he admitted, like, hey, if Poyd and Hire, wow, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde told him to go somewhere, do something, or jump this route, that's what he did, because he just came in from Green Bay after the trade deadline.
And he led the team in interceptions.
Yeah, and he was fantastic. So if he's working with the assistant coaches to kind of get things up to speed and learn the defense, hey, maybe they can unlock even more out of Rasul Douglas.
Yeah, that should be fun to see. One of the things that I started seeing, I think it was yesterday, Tyler Bass.
Dun, dun, dun.
Questions around Tyler Bass at this point. I mean, there were some questions last season, and now you see coming out of minicamp that he's missing short field goals and yada, yada, yada.
It's hard for me to get really locked in on what's going on with the kicker. He hit that 70-yarder a couple of weeks ago, which was cool.
With the wind behind him.
Right. It's like me hitting a 300-yard drive. I need a gale force wind behind me to make that happen. But then, in minicamp and practice, he's missed a few.
Yeah.
They're working with different holders and that sort of thing. I don't know if that's an issue. I don't think there's reason to be like super concerned. But he has, obviously we know how the Chiefs game ended.
Right.
He has missed a couple big kicks.
Sometimes that sticks with you, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hesitant to go down this road of like.
Well, did I hear this correctly? Like, he'll miss a couple of short ones, then they'll go to 52 yards and he'll bang it right down the middle.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't know. Maybe once you get that close, you have Josh Allen. Just go for it.
It's like me, like duffing a chip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just maybe you shank it a little bit. It gets in your head.
Long hitter right down the middle, but sometimes those short ones, Andy, just gets in your head and you're just a little off the mark. Biggest question going into training camp now that we're coming out.
It's
of
Tyler
minicamp.
Bass.
Yeah. I mean,
No.
that's going to be clutch going into the 2024 season. Games coming down to the kicker at the end, and the whole new kickoff rule, which I don't think affects this scenario. But
Right. Biggest question for me is still, what's the pecking order at wide receiver, and how is that going to shake out? Are they going to get in a spot where, there's no superstar, there's no Stephon Diggs, but somebody's got to break out and be a reliable target,
right,
and make big plays? They can say they can do that by committee, but you can only have 3 or 4 on the field at a time.
I would assume you're sitting here right now. You're hoping the Khalil Shakir thing, something that happened during minicamp, enough time to get him ready. Maybe he's not ready at the start of training camp, but he's in a good spot to kind of get up to gear, because I think he's someone that's going to be relied upon along with Dalton Kincaid. We've talked about that before, but even like looking at the depth chart for the Bills right now, Keon Coleman, Khalil, I know this doesn't matter right now, but someone put it together. I'm on ESPN right now, so it's someone from ESPN. But, I mean, this still all has to play out looking at all these guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of players. Like, what's going to happen with Claypool? He's been pretty good. Hamler has flashed, right? You would expect MVS to make it. You would expect Matt Collins, Coleman, Shakir, and Samuel. So that leaves – do they keep 7 guys? I don't know. Does the kickoff rules affect that? Do they?
Yes.
Like you mentioned that. Do they play him at running back? Do they play running backs back there? Like, I don't know. What do they think about a guy like Shorter or Shavers or Andy Isabella?
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. That's still going to be a question because at the end of the day, you can say we're going to do this by committee and we have 10,000 different toppings on the pizza, but somebody's got to be your pepperoni.
Wow, I like that analogy, Andy.
The other big question I have, and you can probably speak to this too, is like, what are you going to get out of your edge rushers? Like, what are you going to get out of Von Miller? Can Russo and Epinesa step into even bigger roles and be like dominant forces? Because if Miller's not back to some semblance of what he used to be, like even 75 or 80%, because last year he showed nothing.
Nothing. And you're hoping to get Von Miller back with the full off. He started to play better, right? During the end of the season.
He and McDermott both said that his best 3 games were the last 3 games.
So there's that to build off of. So much around Gregory Rousseau there that you see these big plays. You just want him to take the next step too. And then A.J. Epinesa, I think, did a lot last year. A guy that you can rely on to get up in the air and bat down passes. I think he batted one to himself and had a touchdown. So he's there. And again, it's like everything in life. I was paired with Epinesa in the Bills media golf outing. So by nature, having spent time with some guy, you pull for them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So you kind of hope that he showed what he can do. Maybe he can do even more this year. And I think the Bills are going to need that. That was sorely lacking. Never got to Patrick Mahomes in the divisional round.
You need somebody to get up in that double-digit sack range.
Yeah.
And more importantly, like you just alluded to, you need somebody to close out big games, to make that big play. That's something that's been missing from the Bills for several years. Like
Von Miller's first year, you saw him close out games. It was there.
In that Chiefs regular season game.
Right.
He forced that play and forced Mahomes out and then made the mistake, and that was it, right?
So you're not too far removed from that. You're an injury and a year removed from that.
At 35 years old.
I get it, but I mean...
He's almost as old as me.
35, that's more like 30 or 29 these days.
Sure.
That's where I'm going with, and 50 is more like 70, according to you.
Yeah, I'm pushing it now.
3 and out,
That
Andy.
means I'm about 60. That's how I feel some days.
3 and out. Let's get to it.
All right.
Aaron Rodgers, no show at Jets mandatory minicamp for a personal reason that meant a lot to him. I don't know if you've seen what it was. I still haven't seen what it really was. But I've said this before with like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, these elite quarterbacks, I don't think it's the end of the world for them to miss part of it, especially when he was at every organized team activity leading up to it. And I also don't care.
Yeah, I am so sick of Aaron Rodgers. Like, I'm sick of hearing about him positively or negatively. Like, the guy kind of lives in his own space. He likes to seek attention in his own kind of ways, good or bad.
All right, inside what we do for a living, the Bills just moved up their practice.
Oh.
So we'll kind of wrap it up here. Vacation plans, Andy, for this time off.
I am going to spend some time with La Familia, hang out. I've got my sister coming into town from Texas and all of her family, who we don't get to see that often. So going to play some golf, spend some time with fam, jump in the pool, Just kind of chill for a few weeks.
Maybe we can get out there too. I have a vacation coming up, a golf weekend for Father's Day in New England. And then the week after that, I'm off for my anniversary. And then the 11-day power play is starting back up. We know Andy has encouraged people to come heckle me and boo me, and he will donate to the charity for cancer charities in Western New York.
You keep reminding me of that.
We've raised over $10 million so far, Andy. We need you to help us get through more. I've been out there for a few years now. Some good, some bad. I know the guys who go there and cover it for us like to show the bad with me missing a easy one-timer goal that should have went in, and then followed that up with me getting crushed running into my own teammate at the blue line.
There it is. There it is.
But redemption is always there. I have been able to find the net a few times and help the charity raise some money. This is not good.
There's you getting laid out.
And here comes the goal, my man.
Oh, my God.
The speed is dynamic in this. Call for the puck. 5-hole.
Hey, net front presence. That's
that
you.
Dude, I won't say who it is, stopped playing hockey not that long after that.
Oh. You retired him.
It looks like it. All right, you got to get to practice. We
Yep.
got to get going.
Make sure you like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Find us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. Give us some love.
And we'll see you as we approach training camp.
You know it. Can't
Yes.
wait.